outside. Girlfriend wants to rescue boyfriend, but she is stopped by Doctor and Fabrizio. Shortly after, three men in strange costumes drag boyfriend into the house and ties him up onto the table. With the ritual music turned on, the abuser breaks boyfriend's leg with a hammer. The three bandits are no one other than the three Knights of Glory. And then they take out a scary torturing tool, aiming to gauge out boyfriend's eyes. When the ritual comes to an end, the three killers leave the house. The next day, they rescue me, and girlfriend is drowning in grief. The bloodstains and the props left on the table remind them that it is real and they are doomed. So they decide to flee the car before they are captured by the cult leaders. Crossing the woods, they arrive at an abandoned car park and realize they are not the first victims. It is mysterious where the previous travelers are and what they are doing. At this time, Doctor points his finger at girlfriend, saying that their sufferings have to do with boyfriend's reckless behaviors. Girlfriend criticizes Doctor for running away without taking care of boyfriend. She even doubts the true identity of Doctor, for normally doctors do not opt for carpooling. While they are in a fierce argument, Mute enters a car to touch her notebook. Elisa asks her if she knows the way out of the woods, and Mute writes down that it is not a forest. Before Elisa could fully fathom her answer, the alarm for ritual rings once again. Based on last night's experience, they suppose that someone needs to be killed, so they quickly flew away from the car park. Despite them making efforts to exit the woods, they are led back to the wooden house. This time round, even their trailer is gone without a trace. What's left behind is only a bottle of beer. They have no choice but to spend the night at the wooden house. As a form of stress management, everyone takes turns drinking the beer and reveal their own backgrounds. Doctor confesses that he was penalized for killing a patient, and then he had a fight with his wife before he carpooled away from home. Fabrizio admits that he committed murder when others accuse him of being the mafia. Elisa says that her parents sold their house in order to afford her medicine course, but now she is going for an abortion. The heartfelt sharing session has eased their tensions, and they soon fall asleep. At midnight, the alarm for sacrifice is sounded, and red light filtrates the whole house. Elisa is awakened to find all the lamps on the pole are lightened up. A stage appears out of thin air, with girlfriend, Mute, and Doctor tied up onto respective stake. A flock of villagers wearing masks are staring at Elisa, who is paralyzed. Fabrizio dashes out to pull helpless Elisa into the house and shuts the door. Fortunately, the villagers just turn to the stage as the appointed time comes. After the winged horse steps its feet, the ceremony begins. The man on stage first says the incantation. With burning hot knives, the blind knight gauges out girlfriend's eyes, and the deaf knight cuts off Doctor's ears. Then they shake the bells, offer the shattered parts to the scarecrow high above, and slay the young Doctor. The sight of such a bloody scene sends shivers down. Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a thriller film, The Girl Who Got Away. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. On a dark night, a bleeding lady is standing on a lonely road, holding a knife in her hand. The little boy sees her while his father's car is passing by the lady. He asks the father if they should help the lady, but the father says they should report it to the police. Strangely, driving down the road, they find a young girl running ahead of their car. It looks like she is getting rid of some captors. The father finally stops his car and goes down to check what has happened. He tells the little boy to remain in the car and stay safe. After a while, the young girl comes to their car and begs for help. Just after the boy lets her in, the crazy bleeding lady also arrives and tries to break the window. Fortunately, the father comes back in time to knock her down. Soon after, the cops reach the scene to conduct investigations. Christina is an elementary school teacher aspiring to adopt a teenage girl, nicknamed Student. After she has done the paperwork, something bizarre happens. A car accident is discovered on a remote road. The man who passes by likes to take a look at the mess and finds someone is lying on the floor with severe injuries. He intends to call the police with his cell phone, but there is no reception in the deep mountains, so he calls for help on his car's wireless phone. Right after he does the report, a lady with bloodstains all over her face appears right beside him. In terror, the man tries to figure out who she is and what she wants to do. All of a sudden, the lady is shot dead by someone standing behind her. The man flees his car, but is also gunned down by the killer. This particular woman killer is named Elizabeth. Gerald, the retired sheriff, and Jamie, the young sheriff, have a discussion on Elizabeth. 20 years ago, she kidnapped 5 young girls. Christina is one of the 5. Unfortunately, Elizabeth manages to break free from the police car during the aforementioned car accident. is infamous for being a brutal and sadistic series killer. Back then, she rushed into another house to capture the girls and murdered their parents. When she was arrested, 4 corpses of the teenage girls were found in her backyard. Christina is the only lucky survivor. Now that Elizabeth is at large, Gerald worries that she will do harm to Christina, so he reminds Jamie to take good care of Christina. Jamie turns around to find a man pointing a gun at him. The man's property is frozen, and Jamie is here to force them to move out. The old man hates to leave the house where he has stayed for years, so he commits suicide before Jamie. The death of the old man makes Jamie resolute in protecting Christina from the impending peril. Comes the night. Friends throw a birthday party for Christina. She takes this chance to announce her plan of adopting one of her students. Not until she finishes the sentence, the doorbell is rung. Christina answers the door to find Jamie outside. He informs her that Elizabeth has escaped from the police car. Christina is completely shocked upon hearing that. A painful memory vividly flashes through her mind, ruining her mood. Disturbed, she stops the celebration and brings Student away from her house. Student is confused and upset, but Christina says she has no other choice. They arrive at the house of Christina's foster parents. Jamie is also there. He tells Christina not to worry so much because many cops are sent out to search for Elizabeth. Christina replies that she will be Elizabeth's main target from now on.
Gangotri.
The same night, Elizabeth attacks someone in the toilet and slashes him dead with a piece of broken glass. Gerald and Jamie have another conversation. Gerald reveals that Elizabeth was a nurse who took care of babies when their mothers were in case 20 years ago. Gerald asks Jamie to prevent the same tragedy from repeating itself. Jamie retrieves the relevant documents on Elizabeth's case and asks his colleague to restore the data.
Gangotri.
From there, they find a short video clip of Christina when she was only 10 years old. In the interview, Christina said something like she believes in Jesus. Jamie notices something unusual and tells his colleague to increase the clarity of the video. On the other hand, Christina is watching the news about Elizabeth with fears. She is thrown back to the olden days when she was locked up and tortured. At this time, someone rings the doorbell. Her colleague asks her for a favor to take care of her child as she needs to go back to school for a makeup class. Without a second thought, Christina agrees to help. And then she plays a hide-and-seek game with the child at her house. A while later, she learns from her ex-boyfriend's mother that he is missing, and she cannot reach him via phone. The mother is filled with worries for her son, so she asks Christina to go check out his apartment. Christina ensures the mother that she will visit his house soon. To her shock, after she hangs up the call, the colleague's child is missing. When she feels paranoid, Jamie sends back the little girl, saying that she runs out of the house. Christina feels relieved that the girl is safe. Jamie tells her he is stationed outside her house to watch over her. Christina says she is adopted by her kind foster parents, and she wants Student to feel the same love and concern. At night, Gerald and Jamie talk about the videotape. Jamie deduces from Elizabeth's words that a third party seems to be involved. Gerald shakes his head at such a hypothesis and adds that the he mentioned could well refer to Jesus. Jamie then walks around the property to do a check. To his shock, Christina suddenly shows up with joy. Jamie thinks she is awakened, but she is in fact sleepwalking. The next morning, Elizabeth wakes up to find dust and dirt all over her body. Before she leaves for work, she treats Jamie with a cup of coffee and receives the latest update about Elizabeth. It is said that a truck stolen by her is found 40 kilometers to the south. The further away Elizabeth is, the more secured Christina is. And then Christina drops by her ex-boyfriend's house. She calls his name, but no one replies. Christina enters his bedroom to find him already dead. She flees the house, thinking that it must be done by Elizabeth. Jamie wonders how Elizabeth knows the guy, and it could well be other murderers. After Christina walks away, Jamie's colleague shares her opinion about the ex-boyfriend's death. The two of them conclude that if Elizabeth is behind this, then there must be someone else to leak information to her. Otherwise, it is impossible for Elizabeth to know her ex-boyfriend's existence as she is in prison for 20 years. Returning to school, Christina finds Student missing. Student's friend reveals that she is in the church. Christina journeys to the church to discover a student making out with a boy. In a fury, Christina rebukes them and takes Student away. In the car, Christina quarrels with Student. At last, Student gets so upset that she storms out of the car. In order to identify the third party, Jamie visits Elizabeth's hospital. A staff nurse recalls that Elizabeth was fired due to an affair she had with someone else. She adds that the man was in police uniform 5 years ago. By now, Jamie is led to think that Elizabeth's lover might be Gerald. He is reminded that Gerald is reluctant to comment on the third party in the video. Christina seeks Student's foster dad to get her custody. Foster dad is a drunkard, but he threatens to reveal Christina's background. Soon later, Christina hears from Student that she is aware of her unpleasant past. That night, Elizabeth sneaks into the foster dad's house. At first, he thinks the noise is from Student, but as he walks back to his own room, he is shocked to find his wife lying dead in a pool of blood. Immediately after, Elizabeth slashes him to death. Student comes out of her room just in time to witness Elizabeth cutting the foster dad. Terrified, Student flees the room without hesitation. And then Elizabeth gives her a chase. At this time, Jamie realizes some strange sounds around Christina's house. He surveys the place, only to find Christina sleepwalking and digging soil. The next day, Christina awakens in her house and bursts into a cry. She soon discovers that somebody has visited the house. She loses her temper before Jamie, but Jamie informs her about the death of Student's foster parents. Right now, Student has disappeared. Jamie wonders why Elizabeth does harm to the people around Christina. Jamie wants to probe further, but Christina shouts at him that she does not know anything. At this point in time, Jamie suspects that the one who helps Elizabeth is Christina. Because Elizabeth really likes her and only spares her life. On top of that, during the time she disappeared last night, there was still time for her to commit a crime. Apparently, Christina happens to know that Jamie had dated Gerald's daughter. So Christina points out that what he has done to protect her is merely to make himself look good before Gerald. Jamie is rendered speechless. Later, Christina searches Student in the church, only to find Student's boyfriend dead. Elizabeth is standing right next to him. Frightened, Christina escapes the church, but she cannot escape the sorrowful memory of the day she had with Elizabeth. She remembers that at that time, Elizabeth also chased after her in the woods. What's creepier, as soon as she looks up, she sees the house where she was locked up. On the other hand, Jamie's colleague manages to make the video even clearer and discovers the third person. Receiving such an update, Jamie rushes to the church to ask Christina, who tips off all the information to Elizabeth. In reply, Christina tells him she used to write a letter to Elizabeth monthly, and she ever told her about the ex-boyfriend and Student. Meanwhile, they are informed that Student has been found dead. Christina breaks down at Student's death, and she leaves after bidding farewell with him. In the meantime, Jamie learns from his colleague that the video was taken 1 week before Christina ran away from Elizabeth. At that time, all the other girls should have been killed, but strangely, another girl was found in the mirror reflection. Christina goes back home to scream hysterically and smash things all over the place. The staff in charge of the event confirmed visitors. Soon they argue about the death of Student, and Christina kills him. She says that she is not Christina. Truth is the real Christina was captured and killed after she ran away. It is so traumatic even now. She digs soil to uncover Christina's body when she sleepwalks. More shockingly, she is the 6th girl in the room. Jamie arrives at her house to unravel the story. She admits that she is Elizabeth's daughter, but pretends to be Christina. Jamie arrests her. At the same time, Gerald and his wife are watching the video of Christina at home. His wife wants to go for a walk, but is shot dead at the door. Gerald is alarmed by the gunfire. Upon seeing his wife's corpse, he alerts his daughter to call the police. Immediately after, Gerald becomes the next victim. Gerald's daughter gives Jamie an emergency call. Meanwhile, Elizabeth imagines herself to be the owner of Gerald's house. In fact, the fake Christina is the daughter of Elizabeth and Gerald. That is why Gerald asks Jamie to protect her once Elizabeth breaks free. Jamie drives down to Gerald's house together with the fake Christina. He first discovers his ex-girlfriend lying on the floor and bleeding profusely. She tells him the killer has grabbed her child. The fake Christina decides to face the music. Following the baby's cry, she steps into a room. As soon as she picks up the baby, Elizabeth appears before her and claims that she has done all these for her. Elizabeth hopes her daughter will appreciate the love, but what she has received is a heavy stab in the belly. Elizabeth does not give up easily, so she surprise attacks her daughter. She is about to take the baby out of the room. In a pinch, Jamie pulls the trigger to execute Elizabeth. The movie then ends with the fake Christina revealing that her real name is Katie. This is WCC Movie Channel. Peace out. Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, Jezebel. Spoiler ahead. The movie begins with a young man named Mark, and you can see him helping his pregnant girlfriend named Jessie vacate her place. Jessie hesitates at first to move in together with him, but Mark manages to convince her, and they Both get into a pickup truck. While on the way, suddenly another truck hits their vehicle. Unfortunately, Mark dies in the accident. In the next scene, Jessie wakes up in a hospital surrounded by many doctors. She asks about her baby, and sadly, one of the doctors informs her that she had a miscarriage. Later that day, Jessie calls her father Leon to pick her up, and we get to know that he abandoned Jessie after her mother's death. Leon arrives at the hospital and helps his daughter with a wheelchair. He takes her to his house and shows her a secret table. He tells Jessie that this used to be her mom's bedroom and tells her to use this room for the time being. The next day, she goes through her childhood stuff, and suddenly she falls from her wheelchair. She notices something under the bed and finds it to be a box. Jessie opens the box and finds videotapes left by her mom, saying it's to be opened on Jessie's 18th birthday. Jessie plays the tape on her TV and sees her mom's wishes for her 18th birthday. And we get to know that her mom's name was Kate. Suddenly, her dad walks in and takes the tape out. He seems to be pissed off and breaks the tape. He lifts Jessie slowly and puts her on a couch. Before leaving, Leon warns her not to snoop around the house anymore. He takes Jessie's wheelchair and drops it into the nearby lake. In the next scene, we see Jessie strapped to a chair and her mother can be seen standing beside her. Someone pushes her around the room and she sees a ritual that is being conducted on her. She sees a man putting some white powder in her brain. Suddenly, someone puts a mask on her and some dark liquid fills it up, suffocating her. Suddenly, she wakes up and realizes that it's all a nightmare. Jessie looks past the screen and gets scared after noticing a mysterious figure moving towards her in a wheelchair. The mysterious figure gets closer and tries to touch her. Jessie gets scared and turns to the other side. The next morning, Jessie finds her mother's old wheelchair beside her bed when she wakes up. During breakfast, her father apologizes for his rudeness the previous day. Before leaving the house, her father asks if she had found any more tapes, but Jessie assures him that she found only one tape. Her father is gone. He plays the second tape. The tape, her mom appears on the screen and talks about her dreams. The mother mentions something about an inner demon and says that she learned to read cards from a friend named Moses at the church. Right before the video ends, her mother gets upset and goes away. In the next scene, Jessie wakes up from a nap after hearing some noise from upstairs. Suddenly, a physician approaches Jessie from the door and apologizes to Jessie for getting inside the house. The physician introduces herself as Rosaura and starts Jessie's therapy session in her bathtub. In the bathtub, Jessie closes her eyes and Rosaura leaves the room. Suddenly, the lights go out and the tub starts filling with a black liquid. A mysterious person can be seen sitting on the other side of the tub. It tries to touch Jessie, but decides to retreat. As Jessie opens her eyes, the mysterious figure screams and scares the shit out of her. Jessie tries to get out and open the door, but falls in the process, and the demon-like figure follows her too. Jessie screams as it grabs her and starts spitting black liquid on Jessie's face. Leon and Rosaura rush into the room and find Jessie sitting in one corner of the room with everything turned back to normal. He asks Rosaura to take Jessie to the bedroom. Leon gets pissed and yells at Rosaura for leaving Jessie alone. He gets so angry that he asks the physician to leave the house immediately. Then Leon finds the remaining tapes and tells Jessie that it's not her mother, but she recorded these only because of the tumor she had. Afterward, Leon takes the tapes outside and puts them in a fire bin. Then he enters a shed and gets a lighter. But suddenly, some supernatural force lights him up, and when he tries to go outside, the shed door closes automatically. Leon burns to death as Jessie screams helplessly. In the next scene, at Leon's funeral, Jessie hears someone calling for her. She turns back and finds it to be her high school friend named Preston. Between their conversation, Jessie sees a man across the room and loses her consciousness. The next morning, Jessie wakes up and finds Preston beside her bed. She thanks him for staying there all night taking care of her. Later that day, Jessie tells Preston about tapes she found in her home and about the nightmares she's been having. They both return to Jessie's house, and she plays her mom's tapes to Preston. But Preston turns off the video and tells Jessie to watch the videos after she gets recovered. Sometime later, Preston receives a call from his wife Sam, and she tells him to come home soon. So Preston gives Jessie a phone and tells her to contact him in case of an emergency. After Preston leaves the house, Jessie plays the third tape of her mom. This tape begins with her dad Leon recording a date with his wife Kate during a trip to South Louisiana. After the third tape ends, Jessie decides to play Jezebel's already dead. Suddenly, a supernatural force hits the TV with a whiskey bottle, and Jesse immediately calls Preston. Unfortunately, his wife Sam picks up the call and declines it after hearing Jesse's voice. Later that night, Jesse goes near a window and notices some strange lights from the other end of the lake. A few moments later, Jesse hears someone running upstairs. She goes to check, but finds nobody. Suddenly, Jesse feels someone touching her, but when she turns around, she doesn't find anybody around. Jesse moves back in fear and goes near the mirror, where she sees a reflection of someone standing behind her and suddenly tells her to come closer to the mirror. Jesse moves close and tries to touch the mirror, but suddenly the mirror shatters and Jesse finds another tape hidden in a secret compartment inside the wall. This tape doesn't seem to have any label on it. As soon as she picks up the tape, she senses that something isn't right and throws it away. The next morning, Jesse wakes up and finds the same whiskey bottle beside her, but to her shock, she finds it in good condition. Later that day, Preston visits Jesse, and she shows him the reflections from the other end of the lake. Preston suggests that they should go there, and Jesse agrees to it. They both use a boat. On the way, they find some strange things hung around the trees. After reaching the other end, they both discover a graveyard, and they find some flowers nearby. When Preston removes the debris away, they get shocked after seeing Jezebel's name and her birth date sculpted on the headstone. After the sun goes down, Preston starts digging the grave. He digs out a little coffin and opens it using a crowbar. Shockingly, they find a skeleton of a child inside the coffin. Back at home, the sheriff arrives, and they hand over the skeleton for autopsy purposes. The next day, Jesse and Preston drive to Woodbury to see their former family cook named Mrs. Davis. Jesse further adds that she used to cook for their family, even before Jesse was born. They both reach the house and find Mrs. Davis sitting in her garden. Preston kneels before Mrs. Davis and introduces himself and Jesse. Right when he introduces Jesse, the old woman starts saying some spell like bullshit and mentions the name Moses. Jesse remembers the name from her mom's second tape, but they both get confused by the woman's attitude. Later, Mr. Davis comes to them and explains that it is a spell to call the spirits. Preston gets pissed off at their smelly bullshit and takes Jesse away. While driving, Jesse says about the man named Moses to Preston and asks him to drive to the church. They reach the place. Preston goes into the ruined church and finds clues of rituals that happened there. Preston also finds a photograph of a man with the name Moses scribbled on it. In the next scene, the two of them return to Jesse's home, and Preston starts convincing Jesse to get out of this place. He asks her to stay in his mom's house, to which Jesse agrees. Despite being married to Sam, Preston confesses his love for Jesse. Unfortunately, we don't get to see any tongue massages. Preston carries Jesse into the house, and she starts packing her stuff. Preston takes her luggage and gets inside the car. Suddenly, Preston gets scared, seeing the mysterious figure sitting next to him. The dark... Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural American horror film, The Unborn. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a woman named Casey, and we can see her running in a park. She stops to rest and spots a glove. She turns back and sees a creepy young boy directly looking at her. We can notice the boy is having bright blue eyes and pale skin. Suddenly, the boy disappears, and instead we see a dog wearing a mask. Casey follows the dog into the trees and spots the same mask lying on a pile of leaves. She starts examining the mask and uncovers a jar holding a human embryo inside. As the camera pans in, hey, what's up, guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, Insidious, Part 3. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. This movie happened years before the haunting of the Lambert household. A young and beautiful Quinn Brenner checks out the house of Elise Rainier in the hope that she can ask her to make contact with her recently deceased mom. When Elise opens the door, Quinn explains, hey, what's up, guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, Malignant. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In fear, a woman finds the walls around her starting to twist, and she suddenly enters another dimension. She sees a killer in black is violently attacking an old lady, beating her to death. The woman is so scared that she screams out loud. While she is screaming, She returns to reality in a blink. What just happened, however, was not a dream. A few days later, the same weird thing happens again. This time, the woman finds herself in somebody else's house. This time, she witnesses the mysterious killer murdering a man in bed. When she wakes up, she calls the police and leads them to the house where the murder happened. They do find a dead body on the bed. Is the woman haunted by a devil, or does she have psychic powers? The whole story starts when the woman is pregnant. The woman is called Madison. This is her 4th pregnancy. The previous 3 pregnancies ended in unexplained miscarriages. One day before Madison goes to work, she turns off the TV while her husband is watching a football match. Her husband is not happy about this, and they have an argument. Madison asks her husband to stop drinking, which angers him. During the argument, Madison's husband pushes her and smashes her head heavily against a wall. Seeing Madison collapse in pain, he runs to the kitchen to get an ice bag for her. Madison locks the door as soon as he is out of the room. Madison cries and realizes her head is bleeding. That night, Madison's husband is sleeping on the sofa downstairs. He is awakened by a strange noise. He follows the noise to the kitchen and sees the smoothie maker is working. He turns it off and sees that the fridge door opens itself. He finds it weird. Suddenly, he hears that the TV is on. He runs to the living room and finds a dark shadow sitting on the sofa. The moment the TV turns off, he turns on the light. The shadow is gone. He looks around. Suddenly, the shadow appears closely behind him and attacks him unexpectedly. Madison wakes up from her dream. The pillow is wet with the blood from the back of her head. She goes downstairs and sees that her husband is dead. It appears he died in a gruesome way. The dark shadow appears again. Madison is terrified. She runs back upstairs and hides in the room. The shadow follows her and bursts the door open. Madison is hit by the door and passes out. Later, a police officer comes to Madison's house. At first, he thought it was just a normal case, but when he sees Madison's husband's body, he is shocked. The next day, Madison wakes up in a hospital. Her sister Sydney is keeping her company. Her sister tells her that, unfortunately, the baby did not survive. Madison is heartbroken. The loss of her husband and the baby is a great blow to her. The officer visits Madison in the hospital. He needs to ask her some questions, but considering Madison's current state, the officer postpones the interview. During the investigation, the officer learns from Madison's neighbor that Madison's husband was abusive. There was no evidence of forced entry that night. It appears that Madison has the motive. 2 weeks later, Madison has recovered and moves back home. Something weird. Looking out from the window, Madison sees the streetlight flashing. Looks like somebody is standing beneath the light. Madison worries that the killer may break into the house again. She closes all the curtains and doors. However, there is something wrong with one door which won't shut properly. Every time Madison closes it, it will open by itself. Madison wonders if the house is haunted by a ghost. Madison runs to the bedroom out of fear. She is sleepless the whole night. The second day, Madison installs a bolt on every door in the house.
जाना है क्या
Her
आगे?
sister comes to visit her, but cannot open the
हाँ?
door. She goes
अच्छा
to the
पास
other
में ही
side
है.
of the house and gets Madison's attention, who is standing in the room in a trance. Madison's sister gets into the house and asks about the crack on the wall which Madison is staring at. Madison tells her sister that her husband did that when he smashed her head against the wall. Sadness and loneliness surround Madison, but she longs for her family's company. Then Madison reveals to her sister that she was adopted when she was 8 years old, which surprises her sister. Meanwhile, a tourist guide is just finishing her work. When she is about to leave, she hears some sound coming from the dark tunnel behind her. She walks into the tunnel and asks if anyone is there, but there is no response. When she turns around, she hears the sound again. She is scared and hurries to turn on the light. She can hear the sound coming after her. The moment the light is on, the sound disappears and there is nobody in the tunnel. Suddenly, a monster white shadow jumps to her from the ceiling. When she wakes up, she finds herself tied in a small attic with her mouth sealed with tapes. The shadow is right beside her. And then a tape recorder starts to play a recording saying that Dr. Weaver is his first target. The shadow takes out the tourist guide's phone and calls the doctor. The shadow just says one sentence: "It is time to cut out the cancer," and then hangs up the phone. That's what the doctor said years ago. The doctor takes out a medical record and begins to recall something. Many years ago, she received a patient called Gabriel, who is violent and extremely strong, as if he is possessed by a demon. One day, Gabriel turned crazy and killed several doctors and nurses. In the end, Dr. Weaver brought Gabriel under control with an anesthetic rifle. She said those words and decided to leave. One day, Madison is cleaning the house. Suddenly the lights are flashing. She feels a sharp pain at the back of head, and her ears are buzzing. She wipes her hair with a towel. While she is putting the towel into the washing machine, Dr. Weaver's face suddenly appears on the door of the washing machine. Madison is in shock. She can't move at all. Strange things happen in an instant. The surrounding begins to transform into another room. The next minute, Madison finds herself in Dr. Weaver's home. She witnesses the whole process of Dr. Weaver being murdered. Madison begins to scream and returns to her reality. What happened is real. The police officer quickly starts an investigation at the crime scene. The officer notices the medical record on the floor that Dr. Weaver took out. The police also notice that the rest of that murder weapon is missing. It turns out that the weapon was taken back by the shadow. The tourist guide is scared when she sees that the shadow comes back and struggles to get loose. The shadow threatens her with the weapon, demanding she behaves. Knowing that her vision is actually real, Madison is terrified and thinks she may have the ability to foresee other people's deaths. Soon the shadow has his eyes on the second target, who is a middle-aged man. It is raining hard. The man sees the windows are open, so he goes to close them. He notices there is a pool of water on the floor, and the watermarks lead to the cloakroom. Although he is a bit scared, he goes to the cloakroom to check it out. It is just a false alarm. There is nobody. However, when he comes back to the window, a shadow appears behind him, and he is unaware. When everything is sorted, he goes to bed. In the meantime, Madison is also sleeping in bed, but when she turns around, she sees the man lying right next to her. What's more disturbing, the shadow crosses over her and stabs the man to death in front of her face. Madison wakes up screaming again. To prove that her vision is real, Madison loses no time in going to the police station and explaining everything to the officer. But it seems the police don't buy her dream. They don't believe Madison has psychic powers. Madison's sister helps to testify that what Madison said is true. Madison saw Dr. Weaver die as it happened. Now she has seen this man being killed. It might be worthwhile to go and have a look. The officer is persuaded, so they decide to go to the place where Madison saw the murder. The police officers and Madison get out of the car in front of an apartment building. As they ponder how to locate the right apartment, Madison quickly uses her ability to recall the apartment number. They knock at the door, which is unlocked. They walk into the room and see that the man died in the bed as Madison had described. When they return to the police station, Madison gives them a portrait of the shadow, the demon Gabriel. During the break, Madison goes to the toilet. The lights start to flash. Then she receives an unknown call. Madison picks it up. To her surprise, the person calls out Madison's birth name, Emily. Madison insists that her name is not Emily. Suddenly, Madison realizes it is Gabrielle who is calling her. Madison is scared and leaves the police station with her sister quickly. On their way to their birthplace, Madison tells her sister that she has known Gabriel since she was a child. She knew him from before she could remember. To recall more about him, she goes to her mother for help. When the name Gabriel is mentioned, Madison's mother is astonished. The dust-laden memory is opened when Madison's mother plays a video recording of Madison's 9th birthday. In the video, Madison's parents prepared a birthday cake for her, but the young Madison was not interested. She turned her head and talked through the air. Her parents were concerned and asked who she was talking to. She said it was Gabriel. Later, Gabriel called Madison through a toy phone, saying that he was going to hurt the baby in her mother's belly. The conversations Madison had with Gabriel scared her parents, but they thought Gabriel was created by Madison so that she could survive her miserable childhood before she was adopted. Meanwhile, at the police station, the officer has made progress in the investigation. The officer finds some USB sticks in the medical record in Dr. Weaver's house, in which Dr. Weaver stored Emily's treatment notes. Dr. Weaver recorded that Emily was seeing visions and hearing thoughts from the devil. Emily also had signs of mental psychosis. There were 3 doctors involved in Emily's treatment. 2 of them died recently. The officer realizes the doctor's deaths might be related to Madison's case and has a feeling that something may happen to the 3rd doctor. So he finds out where the 3rd doctor leaves. While the officer is looking for the 3rd doctor, Madison has a vision again in the bathroom at home. She sees the 3rd doctor in the mirror. The next minute, she is in the doctor's house. When the officer arrives at the doctor's house, he finds the doctor dead in the bathtub. The officer can't believe his eyes. Madison notices Gabriel is still in the room. He is hiding at the top of the door. Gabriel jumps at the officer and attacks him with a knife. Luckily, the officer avoids it and shoots back. Gabriel breaks the window and jumps down the building in a weird way. The officer chases after him. The officer falls from a height and injures himself, and still chases after Gabriel to the basement. Gabriel is quick. When the officer gets into the basement, Gabriel has hidden away in a room. The officer checks the room with a torch carefully. Suddenly, Gabriel jumps down from the car and attacks the officer. The two fight fiercely. Just when the officer pulls out the gun and shoots at Gabriel, Gabriel climbs the wall nimbly like a ghost and escapes away, leaving the officer astonished. At this point, all the evidence lead to Madison and Emily, because when she was young, she received treatment from the three recently murdered doctors. But Madison can't remember anything that happened before she was in. With the help of a psychiatric hypnotherapist, Madison starts to retrieve those memories. Gabriel followed her to her new family. One day, Emily was going to cut the cake and share it with her parents. Gabriel wanted her to kill the unborn baby with a knife. Emily stopped herself before doing it. Madison is frightened by the memory and screams. The psychiatric hypnotherapist wakes her up and calms her down. The officer finds it hard to believe when Madison tells him that Gabriel is the serial killer because Gabriel is just an imaginary friend. Suddenly, the tourist guide, who was kidnapped by the killer, falls down from the roof when she is trying to escape and lands in front of Madison and four people. Later, the police find the weapon in a
Ding ding pie.
Now the police believe Madison is the killer and arrest her. Madison keeps explaining that she is not the killer, but she can't tell them why the tourist guide was in the house. Seeing the police not believe her, Madison gets mad and screams. The lights in the room all explode at the same time, and they receive a call from Gabriel. Gabriel says that he is responsible, and Madison has nothing to do with it. What's more, Gabriel is the devil that Madison saw. In order to help Madison, Madison's sister drives to the now abandoned hospital to gather more information. When she arrives, it is late and dark. She finds Madison's record in the archives. From the recordings, Madison's sister learns that the tourist guide is Madison's biological